Greetings, everyone. So, today we continue to the understanding of the basic salary and the components of salary. In the previous class, we discussed about the various components which are as such, that is, the wages, annuity, pension, gratuity, fees, etc. etc. Now we proceed further to some more other concepts that are also included in the salary, and there are certain also other heads which are not to be considered under the head salary. So let us discuss them one by one in detail about each point. So to start with, we have first the foreign salary and pension. So, any salary or pension which is received from a foreign government, it is taxable in India under the head salaries, provided the individual qualifies as a resident for the relevant assessment year. However, if such income is received from the United Nations organization, that is UNO, it is fully exempted under the section 10 subsection 45 of the Income Tax Act. Next is salaries and professional income. If an individual's employment is merely incidental to the exercise of his profession, then the income arising therefrom is not treated as salary. Instead, it is taxable under the head profit and gains of business or profession because he qualifies the category of a profession. For example, if a doctor is employed part time at a hospital, primarily maybe he practices independently. He runs his own clinic or hospital, but at the same time he is also employed somewhere else as a part time doctor. Then his earnings may be considered professional income rather than salary income. Coming to receipt from a person other than employer. Any remuneration, profits, or perquisites which are received from someone other than employer is not taxable as salary. Such income is assessed under the head income from other sources, since the employer employee relationship is absent. For example, a company director, he receives a sitting fee for attending the board meetings. He will be taxed under the income from any other sources. Payment made after cessation of employment, that is once the service is being completed or maybe it does not continue. So suppose any amount is paid by an employer to a former employee after the completion or cessation of his employment, it remains taxable as salary because it represents remuneration for services rendered in the past. For example, areas of salary or bonus received after retirement are still chargeable under the head salaries. Then payment made to the widow or legal heirs. That is, if the person he dies during the course of service, and whatever payment is made to their maybe heirs or maybe the widow. So here there are 2 points to be taken into consideration. First is that a lump sum amount paid gratuitously or as compensation uh, to the widow or legal heirs of an employee who dies in active service is not taxable, since it is a compassionate payment, and therefore it is not an income. However, family pension which is received periodically, that is month after month, by a widow or maybe any legal heir, it is taxable under income from other sources and not under salaries. Similarly, we have the pension here. That is, how do we consider that? Or what is pension? Pension is actually the amount which is received by a retired employee, and it is treated as a salary income as it represents the defer payment for past services. Then we have the commuted value of pension, because actually there is a choice to the legal heir or to the widow, that whether to take the pension in installment or in maybe uh, in one go. That is called the commuted pension. So the commuted value of pension is exempted from exempted up to a specified limit, which goes as per the calculation under section 10 subsection 10a. And pension and salary which is received from the United Nations are fully exempted from tax under the section 1040 subsection 45. Similarly, we have voluntary foregoing of salary. That is, if an employee voluntarily foregoes salary that has already become due, it is still taxable because the income has already accrued and its subsequent non-receipt amount to mere application of income. For example, if there exists a genuine agreement not to pay salary at all, such income never accrues and hence it is not taxable. A person, for example, suppose a person who agrees out of missionary or charitable motives to serve an institution without any remuneration, it is not liable to tax on notional salary, since no income has ever become due. Similarly, we have the tax-free salary. Tax-free, if an employer pays tax-free salary, example, that the employer bears the tax liability of the employee, then the gross salary to be included in the employee's income is the next salary plus the tax paid on his behalf. However, under section 10, subsection 10 double C, if the employer pays tax on non-monetary perquisites, such tax is exempted for the employee. I hope this is clear to you. Moving on to the next point, that is compulsory deduction by the employer. Sometimes, suppose, for example, for housing, food, or welfare contributions are not deducted from the income, but only, so these are called compulsory deductions. So compulsory deductions like for building, housing, or for welfare contribution, they are not deductible though from the income, but only applications of the income. So therefore, salary is taxable on the gross amount, even if part of it is compulsorily deducted before the payment. For example, if an employee's salary includes free boarding and lodging and a fixed sum is deducted for it, then the tax is payable on the gross salary before deduction. For example, if an SSE was engaged on fixed salary upon the obligatory condition that the employer should provide him with boarding and lodging, etc., for which he should pay an amount which was deducted from his gross salary before the payment. In this case, the tax is chargeable on the gross salary without deducting the compulsory deductions made by the employer. Then coming to the member of parliament, the salary and allowances received by the member of parliament, that is MPs, they are not chargeable to tax under the head salaries. Because I think there is when they are member of parliament, there is no employer-employee relationship between them and the government. So such income is taxable under income from other sources under section 56. If we talk about the family pension, maybe family pension received by the widow or the legal heir of a deceased employee, it is taxable under the head income from any other source, since it accrues after the end of the employment relationship, and therefore it cannot be termed as salary. Maybe a standard deduction of 15,000 or one third of the pension, whichever is less, is also available under section 57 subsection maybe 2a. So one has to first understand that whether we will be getting we have to get it taxed, but not as salary, but yes, any other source, but one third of it will be provided as the deduction, standard deduction. Then the last we have the salary grade or pay. A salary grade or pay, it defines the structure of the employee's basic pay, that is including the starting salary, annual increment, and the maximum limit within that grade. For example, if an employee's pay scale is rupees 2200 dash 100, let me explain it here. Suppose here it says that, suppose employee's pay scale is, oh sorry, pay scale it is pay scale is rupees 2200, 100 and 3000 and 200 and continue to 5000 and 300 and 8,000. Okay, so what does this mean? This is representing the salary grade or scale of pay. What does this mean? How do we understand this? This means that the salary is starting from rupees 2200 per month. It is starting with rupees 2200 per month, and then there will be an annual increment, that is after the completion of 12 months the increment would be rupees 100, and it keeps on, every 12th month the salary start. For example, after 1 year it will be 2300, another next second year it will be 2400, third year 2500, and it keeps on increasing by rupees 100 until the basic pay reaches to rupees 3000, and then it will be 3000. Then after 3000, then again there will be an annual increment of rupees 200. After once it reaches the basic pay of 3000, then after that every 12 months it is increased by 200, and it keeps on increasing annually, on the basic pay rupees 200 till it reaches rupees 5000. Okay, till it reaches rupees 5000, and once it has reached the crossed rupees 5000, the annual increment will be by rupees 300, and keeps on till you reach to the maximum grade of rupees 8000. For example, if a person is appointed in the grade 2200, 200, 3000, 200, 5000, 300, 8000, it means that his starting salary will be rupees 2200 per month. But after 1 year, his service he will be getting an increment of rupees 100 per month. That is, his salary will become 20 to 300, and so on till he reaches 3000. Then 3200, 3400, 3600, and so on till it reaches 5000. And once it has reached 5000, thereafter it will be increased by 300, that is 5300, 5600, this way till it reaches to rupees 8000, and this rupees 8000 will be his maximum salary. So this is called salary grade, and I hope with the help of this example it is clear that what do we define as salary grade. So such a structured pay system ensures fairness, transparency, and career progression in public and private organization. And this is how they design the grade pay in order which is in alignment with the promotion or seniority of the employees. I hope this is clear. Now there are some important points that need to be kept in mind. First is on regarding the basis of taxation. That is due or receipt basis. It is the due or receipt basis which is whichever is earlier. That is salary income is taxable on the basis that is we have it here. It is taxed on the due basis or receipt basis, whichever is earlier. So salary income is actually taxable on the basis of due or receipt, whichever occur earlier. So if the salary becomes due in a particular financial year, then it is taxable in that year, even if not yet received. And conversely, if the salary is received in advance, then it becomes taxable in the year of receipt, even though it is not yet due. Okay, so this is about the due or receipt basis. Then coming to the second, that is employer-employee relationship essential. The existence of a genuine employer-employee relationship between the taxpayer and the taxpayee is a precondition for charging income under the head salaries. So, in the absence of such relationship, in the absence of such relationship, the income cannot be taxed under this head. For example, the remuneration received by a consultant or an independent contractor is professional income, and it is not a salary income. Then, talking about the third point, that is the component of salary which is taxable during the year. There are certain components which are chargeable to tax under the head salary during that previous relevant year. That is, first is salary due from the employer. It may include the former employer also. It may include the former employer also. That is the existence, here during the previous year, whichever whether paid or not. And second point is salary paid by the employer, including the former employer, before it becomes due. That is salary received in advance. And areas of salaries paid by the employer, including a former employer, during the previous year, it is not taxed in any earlier years. So these things have to be kept in mind as important notes. And then there is an important exception also, and the important exception is that we should not miss the exceptions part. Exceptions are that remuneration, bonus, or commission which is received by a partner from a partnership firm is not taxable under the head salaries. Instead, it will be taxable under the head profit and gains of business or profession as per section 28, para 5 of the Income Tax Act 1961. So these are important points to be kept in mind, to be taken as notes. Let us talk about the due date. What is due date? So the due date of salary, it refers to the date on which the employee becomes legally entitled to receive the salary, regardless of when it is actually paid. This date is important because salary income is taxable on a due or receipt basis, whichever is earlier, as we have understood just now. So the due date of the salary depends upon the terms of employment and the nature of the organization. So the first, when we talk about, let us talk about the government or semi-government organizations. For government employee, the salary for a particular month becomes due on the first day of the following month. For example, salary for the month of March 2025 will become due on April 1, 2025. If this salary is actually paid on April 2, 2025, it will still be taxable for the financial year 2024-25 since it became due on 1st April 2025, which falls within that year. Coming to the next condition, where employees of bank or non-bank organization, that is private sector, not talking about the government sector, it is for employees in the private companies or banks. The employees in the private companies or banks or salary for a month generally become due on the last day of the same month. For example, salary for March 2025 becomes due on March 2025, even if it is actually paid on say April 7th, 5th or whatever of that year, that is the same year. So therefore it will be taxable for the financial year 24-25 since it became due before the end of the year. The place where the salary accrues um is determined by the location where the services are rendered and not by where the payment is made or received. This rule is essential for determining the taxability of salary, especially in case involving the foreign employment, expatriates, and international assignments. So to decide the principle that applies is that the first point talks about the when the salary accrues where the services are rendered. So salary is said to accrue obviously or to accrues or arise at a place where the employee performs his duties regardless of the place of payment. To understand it better, let us take up an example, that is Mr. A, an Indian resident. He is employed by a company in Delhi, but he is deputed to work in Dubai for 6 months. So even if his, in this case, even if his salary is credited to his Indian bank, to his Indian bank account, the portion of salary relating to the services which are rendered in Dubai accrues in Dubai, not in India. However, since Mr. A is now a resident, suppose is a resident, his global income, including foreign salary, is taxable in India. So we don't let the salary go outside India. Then we have the second point, that is salary paid by a foreign government for services which are rendered in India. So here the foreign government is paying the salary. That is when the foreign government pays salary to an employee who is serving in India. Such salary is considered to accrue or arise in India, and hence it is taxable in India under the head salaries. For example, suppose Mr. B, who is a UK citizen, now he is employed by the British High Commission in New Delhi and he receives his salary directly in pound from the UK government. Here, even though the payment is made outside India, his services are rendered in India, the salary accrues in India, and it is taxable in India. The third point is that is leave salary, which is paid abroad for leave earned in India. So maybe there is a case, there may be the cases where the employee earns leave while working in India and later receives the leave salary abroad. Then the payment is deemed to accrue or arise in India because the leave entitlement was earned for services rendered in India. For example, Mr. C worked in India for 10 years and an Indian company then moved to Canada. Then later, it was while in Canada, he encashed his earned in leave through relating to his Indian services. Now, such leave encashment will be considered as income among accruing in India, income accruing in India, while though it is paid outside India, they are paid outside India. There are certain exceptions to these principles or these rules, and those exceptions are: if a citizen of India renders services outside India and receives salary from the government of India, such salary shall be deemed to accrue or arise in India, even though the services are rendered abroad. For example, maybe we can say that Mr. Suppose A, B, or C, whoever, an Indian diplomat, he is working at the Indian embassy in France. Received his salary from the government of India for services which are rendered in Paris. So maybe he is working at Indian embassy in France, but since Indian government is paying, so it will be considered accordingly. Even though he is working outside India, the salary is deemed to accrue in India, and therefore it will be taxable before it will be taxable in India itself. Okay, so these are the concepts which have to be considered while the place of accrual of salary with all the exceptions. But at the same time, I hope now we are with the important concepts, or what are the basic points to be considered while deciding the salary. It cannot be, all the heads cannot be taken under the head salary. So that is all for this session. Now we'll move ahead with the next, continuing to the next session about the basic salary. Thank you so much.